So close. Almost there. Dun 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 dun! 10,000 miles, people. Time for the review.
Today on Thunder Bear 4-Wheel Drive, it is time for the 10,000 mile 392 review. We're going to talk about some things that have not been so awesome. We're going to talk about some things that I really like about the Jeep. And we're going to talk about whether or not it lives up to the hype, or better yet, does it meet my expectations? Let's start off with some not so awesome things. So this is one of the things I'm a little bummed out about, but I understand it's a Jeep thing, so I really shouldn't complain too much. You can see all up and down the front of the rear fender here, all these little chips and divots. These are from the rocks that the front tires kick up, and it's a Jeep thing, I understand. But it's a little, I don't know, just bums me out. So I wasn't even real thrilled about getting the painted flares in the first place. I would have really rather have had the black plastic fenders because I prefer the contrast between the body and the fender. So I'm actually thinking about getting some of the Rock Blocks mud flaps in order to help maybe prevent some more of this. And the other solution obviously is to get different flares, which is certainly one of the things that I've been thinking about doing. And so this is one of the other things that I'm not real happy about. These would be the remnants of my jacked up inner fenders. So last August, about a month after I got the Jeep, we were headed down to the Tri-Cities, and the temperature outside was about 106 degrees, and I started to hear some noise, pulled over, and the whole inner fender skirt had gotten soft, like it was cloth, and it got sucked into the tire and chewed away part of it. So I pulled out my pocket knife and I trimmed off the big chunk that was hanging down, and you can see now it exposes the washer fluid tank. And so I've watched some other videos and have learned that this apparently is a common problem, and I took it to the dealership and talked to them about it, and they said that they'd warranty it. I told them not to bother, that I would end up replacing these with something different, and I've decided that I'm going to end up getting the American Adventure Labs inner fender liners for the 392. So you can see right here I kind of got it zip tied up to the shock tower just to hold it in place. This side was the worst. The passenger side started to get just a little bit, but wasn't nearly as severe. So let's talk about the real big problem. Both me and my Jeep have had open heart surgery. So yeah, it was pretty severe. So it was December 17th, mid-December of last year, and I remote started the Jeep from the house so that it could warm up a little bit before I had to take off for work. And I walked outside and I heard a very distinct sound of valve train clatter, and it was not a happy sound. As you can hear by the, well, not stock sound that it should be having from the video here, it was pretty bad. So I hopped in and I drove it straight to the dealership that morning, pulled in the parking lot, and I walked over to the service department with the engine running. I opened the door and I said, "Can you guys hear that?" And they go, "Yeah, did we just work on that?" And I said, "You haven't yet." So it was at the dealership for about 3 weeks. I didn't get it back until the first week in January. So while it was at the dealership, they dropped the oil pan, they checked all the mains and rods and made sure that all that was okay, because a ticking sound, a fresh ticking sound, could be a rod bearing, you never know. And when they got the pan off, there was no glitter, there was no glitter bomb apocalypse, so that was a warm and fuzzy that it hadn't completely disintegrated itself yet. Then they pulled the intake manifold and the heads, and that's where they found what we were looking for. It had 2 collapsed lifters, one on each bank. So they ordered replacements for the collapsed lifters. While it was apart, I got a chance to see some of the parts, and I even got to see the collapsed lifters The nice thing about it was the roller tip end of the lifter was still perfect. It glided smoothly. There was no bearing failure in the lifter. Just the hydraulic compression side of the lifter had failed. They pushed in, they didn't come back out. There were no bent push rods, and there was no damage to the rocker arm assemblies up top, so that was all that was needed, was the lifters. They said they put a scan tool on it when it showed up, and even while it was running loudly, it hadn't changed the air fuel mixtures enough or done anything else to throw any electronic codes. So it was just a complete mechanical failure. There was nothing that it registered that anything else was wrong. I didn't even notice loss of horsepower on the way into the dealership. As it was a mechanical failure of the lifter, it was 100% covered. I didn't pay a single dime for the repair. Barry's Automotive was awesome about everything. They kept me informed the whole time. They know I like my Jeep, and so they were super cool about it. Christian was super awesome about calling me and keeping me up to the loop on everything, and was super cool of him. And thank you, Christian. Totally appreciate that. Since I've gotten the Jeep back, it has not made a single ticking sound like that since, so it's been running great. This happened at 6,533 miles, so it was very early on, infant mortality failure, and we caught it before it destroyed the engine. So luckily, I still have a numbers matching engine with the Jeep. And if you like this video so far, please go ahead and tap that like button. It really helps me get more views, and I really need those right now. Now it's time to talk about the things about the Jeep that I really like. And the first one of those is power. So it's nice that the Jeep actually has power. So when I mash that long skinny pedal, I can actually pass somebody. If you've owned a Jeep JK or a JL without a V8 in it, you know the struggle is real. Yeah, you get big tires, you gotta re-gear, but man, they're just kind of a dog when you're going down the freeway. This thing, it don't mess around. So I need to say my piece about power. It is not overpowered, it is appropriately powered. I've seen way too many videos where people bash on this Jeep for being overpowered. Like, no. There are plenty of people that are perfectly happy with this amount of power. And after driving this thing for the first week, I was actually hoping it had more. I think a Hellcat may in fact replace this 392 someday, and I know it will fit. So I really like the adaptive cruise control. Once I learned how to use it, it is super handy. I don't use it all the time, but I'm glad I have it. It has regular cruise control, and I can bounce back and forth between them anytime I want. Manually shifting the transmission is totally a cool feature, but I really think that it's probably only useful off-road. I'm not certain the paddle shifters are even necessary, but it is really cool to have them. They aren't in the way or anything, but I still haven't found a legit use for them yet. The paddle shifters also have a really noticeable lag to them. When you click it, it takes forever for it to actually shift, and it's an electronic thing. You really think that that could be tuned out of it, so maybe someday that's something that can happen. So a feature that I was really happy to see the 392 came with is it actually comes with steel knuckles in the front axle. Now, most of the JLs, the front axle has aluminum knuckles now. That was, you know, weight savings for fuel mileage economy, blah, 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 which means weaker parts, which means not awesome. So steel knuckle for the win. And it also is going to be less likely down here to blow out the bottom ball joint. Rory Irish from Trailmater has towed dozens of Jeeps out of Moab due to the aluminum knuckles breaking apart down here at the bottom ball joint and stranding the drivers out in the middle of nowhere. So another thing that I was really happy to see about the 392 front axle is it comes with CV joints in the front axle. So CV, the constant velocity joints, they are, I've been taught, designed to be stronger than a U-joint. So constant velocity, they have more points of contact inside the joint itself as it rotates. A U-joint has kind of a surge, kind of a high and a low, causing that wheel hop that you'll get on a tight turn on a U-joint front axle. These don't have that. So they might not be chromoly shafts, but the CV itself lends itself to being a smoother transition, a smoother ride, less front wheel hop in that regard. I do plan on eventually swapping these out for the RCV chromoly front axle shafts. So it'll still be a CV, it just has a different boot and a different shell structure to it. So another really cool feature about the 392 is it does not come with an actuator for the front axle disconnect. So you don't have to worry about that part actually failing. What they did was, behind the cover here, they cast a fork into the cover itself that holds the collar in place that joins the two axle halves side to side. So it's always engaged. I think the only reason they did it like that was because they didn't want to change production and have a solid one-piece axle just for this vehicle. The other Jeeps that you can order as a full-time for probably have an actuator, and so they just went with the same axle design. So like I said, when I do the RCV axle conversion, it's going to get a one piece for this end over here, which will eliminate the need for any of that. Unfortunately, the housing still has all this in place. It is what it is. The collar would come out and the fork would just kind of hang in free space and do nothing. So it doesn't really change anything, but I don't have the added worry of additional actuators, electronics, anything mechanical. So that's pretty handy. So as you can see, I got 35s here, and I haven't touched the suspension at all. There are no lift blocks. There's nothing added to it. Nothing has been changed. So I went out, bought some new wheels, new tires, mounted them up, threw them on the Jeep, and everything fit. So we have a friend who recently bought a new JL with the Extreme Recon kit and parked next to each other. These things look almost identical. They've got the 315 BF Goodrich KO2s. I've got the 35 1250 17 KO2. So essentially it's the same tire. I think this one on BF Goodrich's site comes out to 34.5 inches. I think theirs comes out to 34.4 inches. So they're both like right there. The fact that a 35 fits so nicely, 37s will totally fit. And there's a few things you can do to the stock fender. So, you know, your fenders here, this can all be removed and make more clearance. So I could put 37s on it with these fenders, especially after I got the front fenders. That is a thought that has crossed my mind. I've also looked at getting different fenders. I have concerns about the daytime running lights. Not all of the aftermarket flares have plug and play lighting. The full LED package, it's kind of critical to me that it all stay functional without a bunch of hokey weird stuff. So I want to make sure I get something that is truly plug and play ready. Quadratech apparently has come out with a fender that is almost identical to the stock fender, except for the area below the daytime running light and turn signal, and the area that is up on the inside of the fender is none of that's there. And you can reuse your factory light. American Adventure Labs has a slimline light that has a sequential turn signal that looks really cool, that you put on your factory fender and you gut it and you get pretty much the same effect. So lots of different options. If any of you have spent any time looking online for anything for a JL, you know I could talk for like a week only about fender flares. So we'll just not go there. Just know that 35s fit like just slick. I mean, they've never rubbed, they've never touched. I have no marks on any of my sway bar suspension, nothing. So a little extra clearance on the fenders, 37s would go on here, pop, and done. And another thing that I really like about this Jeep is the ride quality. It's difficult for me to put into words and describe just how much better it is than the JK that I used to have, the two-door. The fact that it's longer obviously lends itself to being more stable. But I've had people who have driven 392 Wranglers versus the other four-door Rubicon JLs, and they say that this rides better than those even. So probably has to do with some weight distribution, would be my guess. They did change the suspension entirely for this vehicle, but it is so nice. adequately appreciate this in words as well as I should. It's a Jeep, and it drives phenomenally well. Most people don't grasp that, and there are people I've watched videos are like, well, it dives really hard when you brake. It's a Jeep, and it doesn't dive that hard when you brake. If you've never driven another Jeep and then you drove this one, you would see that this is far superior to those other Jeeps. So it's the ride quality is fantastic. I like going on trips with this, no big deal. We hop in it, we drive to Spokane, we drive to the Tri-Cities, we drive to Wenatchee, we go wherever. We love riding in the Jeep. It's great. And the next thing that I really, really like about the Jeep is the dash. You can kind of take as best as you can, look here. This is like an incredible improvement over the JK, and whoever designed this did a fantastic job. I know it's not vastly different than all the other JLs, but the amount of effort and thought that went into the placement of all the things here, they did a really, really bang up job. I mean, I like the nav system. It's not much different than my Rebel that I have, but it is a little bit different, and the few things that they changed just made it that much better. I'm still not a huge fan of the fact that I don't have actual gauges like you would in a pickup. So in a pickup, you're going to get oil pressure, and you're going to get volts, and then you're going to get temp, and you're going to get fuel, and your tach and your speedo. Here you have a tach and a speedo, and then in the center you get your fuel gauge and your temp gauge. And yes, you can dial through and pull up your other gauges if you want to see them, which it's cool. I mean, it's better than it used to be. You can actually see those values, so that's nice. I'm really liking the center here. The fact that now that it comes with an auxiliary switch panel from the factory, it's dialed in. The auxiliary switches have outlets that come out underneath the dash down here on the passenger side and under the hood by the battery. That's like super cool. It's a Rubicon, so it has the rear axle, front axle lock right here. It has the sway bar disconnect, and right above that is the Off-Road Plus. That is like a game changer. So when you're in four-wheel drive and you hit Off-Road Plus, it changes the tune of the vehicle, and it makes it so much more aggressive. It changes shift points, it changes the idle, it becomes hyper responsive. You give it anything and it's just boom. Right now, it's doing what it needs to do. So you have all the rest of your dash controls. We have a thing here that is the exhaust cutout button. And so when I drive this, well, here, let's just start it. So when I'm driving it, I have the cutouts turned on, so it's in performance exhaust mode. And we actually call this the drive-through button. So when you go to the drive-through so they can hear you, I do that so that they can hear me talk. And then when we leave the drive-through, we go back to regular. So my overall reaction, does it live up to the hype? Does it make me happy? And that is a resounding yes. It's got a freaking SRT 392 Hemi in it. Like, duh. So besides the fact that it's got the Hemi in it, it is an excellent vehicle. Jeep has done a really good job with the JL. Mine's a 2021. They released them in 2018, so they had a few years to work out whatever initial kinks they had in them, which I believe were all software or things of that nature. So I didn't have to suffer through any of that. I don't have the auto start stop because 392. But yeah, it's a great rig. Again, the engineering and the amount of effort that Jeep put into this, just bang on. You guys just knocked it out of the park. Thank you, Jeep. So you heard me talk about all the pros and the cons, the things that have happened to it, the things that weren't so awesome, and the things that I've decided that I like about it, and it all balances out. They took care of me on the warranty, so not a big deal. I'm going to replace the inner fender skirts, not a big deal. I'm going to do something with the fenders themselves, not a big deal. So, you know, the cons for me aren't deal killers. Some people will be like, oh my God, you lost 2 lifters and that's just like horrible. Why would you say that that's okay? Because they took care of me. The warranty covered it. The dealership was awesome about it. And that's customer service. And they stood behind the product and they repaired it and they gave it back to me and it runs great. So, you know, it is what it is. So all in all, it's a Jeep thing. Most people don't get it. I had my 2-door JK for 9 years. And when I traded it off, man, I really wanted another Jeep. And I said, you know, I'll probably never get another one unless they put a V8 in one. But if they put a V8 in a Jeep, I will buy one. And then this happened. So I had to be a man of my word, and I had to buy, fortunately, a 392 Hemi JL. So life is good. Thanks for watching. We probably have a few more videos somewhere here for you guys to watch, right here. And please don't forget to subscribe, smash that like button, and we'll catch you in the next video.